Well, thank you again for coming back to the symposium, the second half of the symposium. And so we will begin our panel discussion now. And we have three experts who will be providing additional and or different perspectives so as to enrich the following open panel discussions. Okay, so first, may I introduce to you from online Professor Takuji Nakamura. Professor Takuji Nakamura is the Director General of Japan's National Institute of Polar Research, NIPR, in Tachikawa, Tokyo, Japan. NIPR is the main research institute that conducts and supports Japan's Antarctic research expedition, JARE, every year. Professor Nakamura himself holds a doctoral degree in engineering, and his research areas include space and upper atmospheric physics. So, Professor Nakamura, the Zoom is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Shibata-sensei. My name is Takuji Nakamura, as introduced. I'm from National Institute of Polar Research. And as introduced, my background is engineering and geophysics, and not geopolitics. So I'm a little bit feeling that I am in a way game here in the meeting. But I thank you very much, Shibata-sensei, for inviting me to this very interesting and important meeting. Okay, let me share my screen. Is it okay?
Yes, thank you.
In full screen?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I start with the Antarctic science. The characteristic of Antarctic science, I feel, listed here. It is mostly curiosity driven by curiosity of each scientist. And so it is basically a bottom-up type science. National Antarctic program itself could be more top-down project, but the science component there is driven by such scientists, so the scientists' own interest. The second is it requires the infrastructure because the Antarctic is far from the most of the countries and situated in very severe natural conditions in polar regions. Without an established national program, National Antarctic program, starting a science on the Antarctic is very difficult. The third, the Antarctic is a huge continent and cannot study the whole Antarctic region by just a single nation. So therefore, international collaboration is a very important part of the Antarctic science. And finally, the countries in the southern hemisphere inherently have advantages in promoting Antarctic science. This is also unique. And this causes diversity in participating countries. The Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, SCAR, is a thematic body of ISC, the International Science Council. And this is former ICSU. And this is a forum for scientists on Antarctic region. It was founded in right after the IGY and a little bit earlier than the Antarctic Treaty itself. And national members of SCAR are the Science Council, Research Council, or academies of countries. The member countries were initially 12, but now it is as many as 46 countries. Okay, this map shows the member country of SCAR. As I said, the participation of Southern Hemisphere countries are very active. The SCAR hosts a biennial science conference, and this is a photo taken at the Open Science Conference held in Malaysia before COVID. Normally, the number of the participants is about 1,000, and so the community size is not as big compared with the scientific unions in ISC. Okay, moving to logistics. Logistics issue is also important in the Antarctic, very important. And first, transportation. For activity of the Antarctic region, where natural conditions are very severe and isolated from home countries, transportation of the party members or the goods for supplies are very important key component of the activity. Icebreakers and vessels and air network are most important infrastructure of Antarctic program. The second, stations in Antarctic region. This is the base of extensive activities in Antarctic observations. Operations, maintenance of the stations in Antarctic is another key issue of Antarctic observations. Vessels that with the ice-breaking capability are recognized as a key platform. The third, safety. The safety of the expeditioners of Antarctic observation and activities. This is equally important to continue the observations in Antarctic. The safety is not limited to the safety from the accident, but also the health and quality of life. Those are also important parts. So all those items need international collaborations, and for Antarctic programs, such collaborations are well matured through the history of more than 60 years. And the COMNAP, Council of Managers of National Antarctic Programs, is the forum for such a purpose. COMNAP was founded in 1988 as an independent body based on the former SCAROP group in SCAR. The currently 32 member countries and 5 observers are the member of COMNAP. The COMNAP serves as a forum to develop practices that improve the effectiveness of activity in the environmentally responsive manner, and to facilitate and promote international partnership, and to provide opportunity and systems for information exchange, and to provide the Antarctic systems with objective and practical, technical and non-political advice drawn from the National Antarctic Program's pools of experts. A good example of COMNAP collaboration is the guideline for COVID-19 mitigation and management after 2020. The guideline is updated frequently and significantly contributed to the member countries and regional groups to keep expeditioners safe. The search and rescue is also an important activity within the frame of COMNAP. COMNAP holds workshops on search and rescue regularly, and this strengthens the international collaboration network, for example, in Eastern Antarctic region, where the relatively fewer stations are there. Okay, finally, I'd like to stress that such scientific and logistical activity is based on a long-term history and also collaborations. And my feeling is that they are pretty robust and not much affected by geopolitical issues directly, but more affected by other issues such as an accident caused by severe Antarctic weather or COVID-like disease or price rise of these. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Professor Nakamura. Second, may I introduce to you Dr. Patrizia Vigni. Dr. Patrizia Vigni is an associate professor at the University of Sienna in Italy. And Dr. Vigni has written many in the areas of Antarctic law, the law of the sea, and more recently on international law relating to cultural heritage. She is one of my dear friends from ATCM meetings in 2000s, almost 20 years ago. So, Patrizia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Professor Akio Shibata and the Polar Cooperation Research Center for having me here and having involved me in this very stimulating symposium together with so distinguished speakers. So thank you very much. Well, the subject matter of my brief intervention is, I would say, quite curious at this time. It's always difficult to organize a diplomatic conference for practical difficulties and also for unforeseeable events. But I'm sure that in the last 3 years, none of us would have think that we would have faced a pandemic and an international conflict, military conflict, affecting the entire international community. So I think that nowadays unexpected events are more significant than the unexpected event that have occurred in the last 60 years, when the Antarctic Treaty has started to be an international regime. And so Italy is going to organized to be the host of the 2025 Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting. And the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting is a peculiar conference to organize because it takes place annually, but actually it takes place in a different country every year. So it means that each party is like if it was the first time that it was organized in the meeting. And actually, with regard to Italy, in 2025, it will be the second time that Italy is going to organize this meeting. The first time was in 1992 in Venice, exactly 33 years before the second time. So it's clear that the situation may be very different. Nevertheless, I believe that in organizing a meeting, no matter which kind of challenges we are going to face, political challenges or practical problems, I think that any state party to the Antarctic Treaty must keep in mind the fact that there are some core issues that must be preserved. And these core issues are, well, first of all, the fact that Antarctica must be used for peaceful purposes. So it's not possible to allow a discussion that disregard one of these core issues. Second, the fact that within the Antarctic Treaty System, scientific research enjoys a priority status. But obviously, as scientific research, we mean that research that is aimed at improving the knowledge and life of the entire humanity, and is not aimed at satisfying the selfish interest of a few states or private persons. And finally, it's clear that the Antarctic Treaty System, in particular after the adoption of the Madrid Protocol, is a system that is aimed at the conservation of the Antarctic environment and resources. And all these objectives, all these goals may be achieved by means of the most successful instrument that the Antarctic Treaty System has developed: cooperation. Cooperation and concrete cooperation is in fact present in any Antarctic activity. We just heard that logistics cannot work without cooperation, but even scientific research cannot work without cooperation. And we also need political cooperation. But cooperation is also necessary at the legal level. We have a legal cooperation, and we had legal cooperation in many occasions. I think that Professor Shibata can confirm this. Article 4 of the Antarctic Treaty, freezing the issue of sovereignty in Antarctica, is a form of legal cooperation. And the legal cooperation also took place when the Secretariat was established and when the liability annex was adopted, because this is the only way to find a new solution that may be acceptable to all states. Certainly, the political challenges that may affect Antarctica and the Antarctic Treaty System may be different. First of all, we can have a direct challenges to the system and to Antarctica, such as, for example, the controversial views about the protection of some species or the environment as a whole. However, we can have challenges that do not directly affect Antarctica, but then they have their noxious impact on Antarctica. Let's think, for example, the pandemic and the Ukraine and Russia conflict that is patently and indirect, that has had an indirect negative impact on the Antarctic Treaty System. And in addition, we have also to take into account that challenges may come from parties to the system. But in that case, it's quite clear that when a state challenges a norm that it has accepted to comply with, that conduct may entail a case of state international responsibility. Conversely, when a third country is challenging the Antarctic Treaty System or the rules that the Antarctic Treaty System has established, in that case, it's clear that that third country must be involved within the Antarctic Treaty System in order to make it more comprehensible by means of cooperation. So, say that it's clear that even Italy, in organizing its Antarctic treaties meeting, has to take into account these core issues that are going to characterize and that have always characterized the Antarctic Treaty System. Well, if we look at the political position of Italy at the political policy, the policy that Italy has always had with respect to Antarctica, we can say that this policy is consistent with the trends that the Antarctic Treaty System has been affected from, because because Italy entered into the system when the mineral resource issue was at stake, but it was a strong supporter of the environmentally concerned trend that led to the adoption of the Madrid Protocol. So if we have to look at the future challenges and the future challenges that Italy must face before 2025 in the organization of the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting, it's clear that no matter these challenges are going to be, it's very important to keep in mind that this system has been successful only thanks to international cooperation and thanks to the constant work together of all the parties, because it's very clear that the Antarctic Treaty System was a successful system because science has driven political decisions rather than political interest to drive scientific research activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrizia. Okay, the third, may I introduce to you Dr. Zia Madani. Dr. Zia Madani is currently a prestigious and very competitive Japan Society of Promotion of Science, JSPS, postdoctoral fellow at Kobe University. Dr. Madani is an Iranian international lawyer, writing in many areas, including Antarctic law, the law of the sea, and international law relating to climate change. Okay, the floor is yours, Zia.
Thank you, Professor Shibata. Hello and good day, everyone. It is a great honor to be a part of this important symposium, along with this line of eminent speakers. In the next few minutes, I will be speaking to the future of Antarctic cooperation and global geopolitical challenges, mainly from a perspective of non-consultative and prospective parties. In doing so, I will be touching upon the principles of Antarctic Treaty System briefly going through the challenges in each of those core principles from the perspective of the non-CP and prospective states with a focus on the global south. Starting with peace, the challenges which that can be witnessed within the area of peace in the context of the Antarctic. One of namely starting with the maintaining peace and isolating geopolitical conflicts unfolding elsewhere between parties of the Antarctic Treaty System, the most prominent a case of which is a recent and ongoing Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which appears to have fundamentally altered the perception of the security in the polar regions. It is worth noting that, again, that the invasion happened while the invader was the presiding member of the United Nations Security Council, the main body of the United Nations that, according to the Charter, has the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. The next challenge is the interpretation of the term measures of military nature. Sorry, I forgot to. Yeah, the next challenge is the interpretation or the definition of the term measures of military nature in the existing international law. The same goes with the term peace in international law. Well, such measures don't necessarily have to be carried out by military personnel, and with the increasing competition in the Antarctic around resource access and regime control, and the transformation what actually entails the military activity, and of course with the advancement of the technology, it seems that the existing demilitarization principles are not sufficient. For example, today we are facing with a concept of uncrewed platforms, for example. The same goes with the term peace, which there seems to be a need for re-examination of other possible nuances of the term peace, rather than solely the absence of violent conflict in the existing international law in the within the Antarctic context. And then the last challenge is the changing international order in the Antarctic, the most important of which is the common position of so-called Western states vis-a-vis China and now Russia, as well as India, South Africa, and Brazil. That, for example, in the case of current and ongoing invasion of Ukraine, they don't seem to be of the opinion that Russia needs to be seen any consequences in the context of the Antarctic for that invasion. The next core principle is science. I will go briefly discuss two challenges within that. The first, which is the ongoing issue of the acquiring decision-making status in the regime. The threshold seems to be high for the states coming from the global south, the developing countries, the least developed countries, disadvantaged states, so on and so forth. And the issue seems to be, which makes it more complex even, is the issue that this threshold is even being reinforced by the practice of the states present in the Antarctic. And so that would be, this seems to be detrimental to the, for the engagement in the ATS, by most of the states coming from the global south. And so therefore we need to think of avenues within which we can facilitate the participation of those states within the Antarctic Fora.
Another, the next challenge seems to be the emergence of the new political dynamic within the Antarctic Fora, and that is one example or instance of which is a recent issue, as was also touched upon by my colleagues in this panel, linking the new states' consultative party applications to one another, the current case of Canada and Belarus. If this issue persists in the years to come, that could turn into a challenge for the resilience of Antarctic legal regime. The next core principle is the protection of the environment. Needless to say, that the biggest issue, critical global issue, is the climate change. And of course, we need to keep in mind that global climate change can per se lead to severe situations such as armed conflicts, food security issues, and mass migrations. Another challenge in that regard is the issue of blocking of the environmental protection of the Antarctica within the issues like politicization of science or the current issue of spurious science, which continue to block taking measures for the environmental protection within the continent. And again, the ongoing prospects for the consensus decision-making around various issues, including the MPA, further MPA designations, liability by prospecting, and so on and so forth. What is self-evident is that the decision-making within the Antarctic Fora and Antarctic bodies have become difficult. Another challenge is within the area of cooperation. Antarctic governance is just like the Arctic and space relies very much on cooperation. And what is important now is that when the avenue of conversation and communications breaks down, it is difficult to achieve cooperation. And of course, it is worth noting here that it's been more than 30 years that there has been an addition to the Antarctic regime. Therefore, it raises the question that what will happen in the years to come in order to be able to sustain the current system. And with that, I will leave the other issues to discuss after for the discussion section. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Madani.